There are 11 classes in Lord of the Rings Online, and today we are going to take a look at the builds of each class in 2023. We've seen numerous changes to class builds over the past several months, and so I thought it was about time to make this video. You can customize your class build on the class traits panel. This is often referred to as the trait tree or the trait lines. It used to be that each class had 3 trait lines labeled by their color, blue, red, and yellow. However, with recent changes, the yellow line has been changed in some classes to a utility line, and you can no longer spec for yellow. The benefit is that this allows you to customize your build even more because the utility line requires fewer trait points than the secondary trait line. Now, not every trait line that we will look at today is necessarily viable for endgame raiding, so where appropriate, I will highlight for you the trait line that is raid approved. If you're looking for a specific class, be sure to use the controls at the bottom of this video to advance to your section. Timestamps are also provided in the description below. There are 4 types of roles that are typically filled in a raid: tanks, healers, support, and DPS. We'll look at which role is viable for which class in the raid setting. Well, nothing to it, but to just jump in with our first class. Bear tanks can be powerful, but can be tricky since they don't have nearly as much aggro skills as, say, the Guardian, and it takes them longer to build aggro through other means than most classes. For this reason, they are usually sidelined as tanks, as groups would rather take Guardians or Cappy tanks. However, a bear tank is at present viable for Hidden Horde Tier 2. Red DPS for a bear is really only going to be viable for solo content. You absolutely want to have this line if you're doing delvings, solo, or landscape questing. You will get very comfortable swapping between man and bear form to optimize the damage that you do. Yellow healing bears will always have a place in a 12-man raid, simply because some of their heals are raid-wide, which makes them extremely handy to have in a tight spot. Their buffs can also allow the DPS to do more damage, but typically, on a raid roster, groups only take 1 bear along, so although they are handy to have, the number of spots are super limited compared to, let's say, a DPS spot. Brawler is the newest class in LOTRO, and it has taken some time to find a viable place to fit them into the ecosystem for raiding groups. At present, some groups will run a Brawler tank instead of a Cappy tank in Hidden Horde because of all the group buffs. Red DPS brawlers are also viable options for raids, and would typically take the place of a red Cappy. In my opinion, the red DPS brawler does more damage than the Cappy, and still has enough buffs to play a support role. If you want to play a brawler, then I highly recommend that you make sure you have a red build and a blue build, because this will allow you more flexibility in the role that you're able to fill in a raid. Blue Burglar is fun to play, especially when you're doing solo content, but it is not currently raid viable. Red Burgs can be super amazing, and if played at optimum, then they can take a DPS spot on your raid roster. However, your Burg needs to really know their stuff in order to get to the level of damage that hunters can do. I've seen a red Burg outparse a hunter before, so I know it's possible. If you have a passion for red Burg, then by all means go forth and master it. Most often, however, the Burg will be playing a supporting role in the raid. The yellow build is the typical spec that you want if you're asked to play a support Burg. Reasons you want to bring a yellow Burg along is because 1, they can remove corruptions from many targets at once, and 2, they can put disabled and/or enraged on the boss. Disabled means the boss doesn't hit nearly as hard, and enraged means that the boss takes more damage. At opportune times, this can make or break whether you meet enraged timers. Rest in peace, double res. Unless you're a blue Cappy, of course. Okay, so hear me out. With all the recent changes to captains, I'm actually excited about the blue Cappy build. Blue Cappies offer a ton of support to a raid, and is now a viable trait line, However, not as a primary healer because they don't have huge single target burst heals, but their group heals and are great, and the buffs are awesome as well. This red DPS captain build allows you to do Oathies, with some very limited healing and damage mitigation bonuses. If there are two cappies in the raid group, then one will need to run red mark and the other blue mark on the target, because they don't stack, which is why you trade this way. Now, the red cappy offers a lot in terms of making the DPS group shine, with group buffs, banners, and Oathies. Red cappy is more of a support role since their own DPS is non-existent. However, when Oathies goes off, then any boss will start melting. The yellow captain is a great tank, and has way more single target survivability than a guardian tank. With last stand, they can save themselves from death, literally changing the outcome of a raid as to whether it's a wipe or a success. They are more versatile in their role in the group, offering heals, being able to res, etc. I confess I've not personally had the opportunity to play blue tank champion yet, but am really looking forward to trying this build that one of my friends use. With recent reworks, the blue tank champion is back. However, it takes some getting used to playing this tank, and it's hard to know if the champion tank will stand the test of time. The verdict is still out on this. One of the biggest challenges of playing a champion in a raid is that you have to be extremely careful when you use your AoE skills, because certain targets need to remain mezzed. This is the build that I use when I'm focusing on single target DPS, with a little bit of AoE thrown in there when I'm trying to clear trash. This yellow AoE champion build here is perfect for mowing down your enemies. Taking this into Sagrath at the moment is so much fun, because I can just mow down all the enemies. They melt before me. Guardian tank is by far my favorite tank to play, and one that I'm most comfortable with. The build here maximizes shield spikes and war chant. However, depending on the boss fight, you may have to reduce the range of war chant in order to not wake up any mess targets. In that case, you can reduce war chant and fill out the rest of the yellow or blue line where some points are missing. The Guardian probably does the worst damage in the game. So yeah, you won't be playing a red Guardian in a raid anytime soon. For this reason, Guardians typically will power level their tunes instead of doing landscape quest, because it takes forever to get through the content on a Guardian. Here is the red DPS line that I use when I'm trying to solo things. A piece of advice: if you're going to level a Guardian, be sure you have a friend with you, preferably a hunter or champ that can do massive damage. The blue hunter is mobile, in that all your skills are at your disposal as you run around kiting mobs. However, blue hunter is also the weakest of the lines when it comes to doing damage. There may be a few fights here or there where, when you're soloing, that it would make sense to be in blue line, especially if you are soloing a boss and relying on kiting strategy to stay alive. But for raids, blue line is not viable. Red line for hunters is the way to go in terms of DPS, and you'll want to be in precision stance. This will allow you to do tons of damage. At the moment, hunters are considered to be the DPS powerhouse of the game. I have seen Hunter average over 1 million damage per second. This means that typically when a raid is filled, people prefer to take Hunters over any other class for DPS. So if you want to be a glass cannon and just blow stuff up, then this is the build for you. If you love pets, this trade line is fun for blue lore masters. Not viable for raids, but great for soloing. Red DPS line for Loremaster is the trade line you will want to be in when soloing content, especially delvings. This line is not for raids, unless you're in like a tier 1 and people just want to blow stuff up. Yellow Loremaster is a support class, but they do a ton. The Loremaster is probably the busiest person in the raid because of their versatility. From mezzing targets to debuffing the boss and targets to healing, the list of things they do go on. There is typically room for one LM in the raid simply because a lot of their buffs do not stack. But if you don't have an LM in your group, then you can totally tell. The blue Minstrel balances between providing support and heals for the group. They have anthems that are raid-wide that they can keep up that affect how hard players get hit. They have massive heals like Triumphant Spirit and Fellowship's Heart, however their group heals are restricted to their Fellowship only. The Minstrel Red DPS has really picked up recently in the amount of damage they can do. From this build you can see that no points are really spent on healing. The majority is focused on DPS. Even the anthems are focused on doing more damage. They are also ranged DPS and are totally viable even for Hidden Horde tier 3s. So if you love playing Red Mini, then gearing it out can earn you a spot on the DPS team. The Runekeeper Blue healer typically ends up focusing healing the tank that has the boss on them, since their group heals are poor. They are also the only class that can mark up to 2 people in the raid, that if they die, they receive an automatic res. There used to be a day when the Red Fire Arcade used to do the most damage in the game. Sadly, those days are behind us. And now the Red Fire Arcade can't even do as much damage as the Red Minstrel. The Red Fire Arcade does a lot of damage over time. The Yellow Lightning Arcade is better for burst damage. From my personal experience, I found that it is just easier to solo in Lightning because of the burst damage, which translates into greater survivability. Warden Blue tanks are currently meta for Sagroth, the Rat King boss, simply because they have insane corruption removal, even more so than Guardian tanks. They also have powerful self-heals, and if played right, have remarkable survivability. Warden Red DPS does a lot of damage over time, but their burst damage is really poor, making them more challenging to solo. You will want to bring a friend along when leveling for this reason. However, in boss fights, if they just stay focused on the boss and build all their dots, then they can do some crazy damage. If you enjoyed today's episode, please hit the like and subscribe button. See you next time.